Follow @Journal Sports. I loved sitting with Yogi Berra in the Yankee Stadium dining room, listening raptly as he told many humorous and often unbelievable tales. One of my favorites concerned the time in the mid-1950s when he and over 20 of his Yankee teammates, including Mickey Mantle, Whitey Ford and Phil Rizzuto, were approached by a persistent and somewhat suspect real estate developer offering to sell them cheap land in Central Florida for just $30 an acre. All of them bought several plots. Unfortunately, the land they purchased was deemed too swampy to build. They got swindled. In 1964, a mysterious investor named M.T. Lott came calling, offering the players $150 an acre for their useless and unwanted property. They all sold without hesitation. All except Yogi. Berra held out. He believed that something could be built there someday, or that another offer would come along. His friends thought he was crazy. Yogi's instincts for real estate, however, turned out to be just as sharp as in baseball. In 1965, the identity of their mystery buyer was revealed. Walt Disney was quietly snapping up land for his next project, a Disney World to be built in Central Florida. Walt silently acquired over 27,000 swampy acres for next to nothing, but to complete his plans, stubborn holdout owners like Berra had to be wooed. According to Yogi, they finally settled on a price of $300,000 per acre. It ain't over till it's over. Indeed, the tracts Yogi sold are now part of Epcot Center, which opened 35 years ago this week. Walt's dream for his Central Florida property was much different than what would actually be built. Disney wasn't thinking of just another theme park. He envisioned the experimental prototype community of tomorrow, EPCOT, a model utopia of urban planning and scientific development. After Walt died suddenly in 1966, Epcot's plans were modified. It debuted on October 1, 1982 as a theme park permanent World's Fair. Walt also considered bringing a professional baseball team to the Sunshine State as part of Epcot, a notion ahead of its time. Pro sports were unthinkable in the tropical climate of sparsely populated Florida. The NFL's Dolphins and Buccaneers hadn't been established, and baseball was mostly about spring training. Disney believed it could work. As Jeff Barnes, author of the new book, Beyond the Wisdom of Walt: Life Lessons from the Most Magical Place on Earth, observed, Walt predicted the growth of the American family and disposable income. He knew that Americans liked leisure and playtime, and anticipated the modern entertainment industry, which includes sports. A visit to the Houston Astrodome in 1965 convinced Disney that a dome could work in Florida, where extreme heat and unpredictable weather are the norm. Epcot would have been completely covered by a climate-controlled top. In addition to the sports facilities at Epcot, there were going to be high-rise apartments, industrial areas, theaters, research labs, energy-efficient vehicles and public parking space, all nestled under a cool dome. The whole thing would have been funded by the profits from the Magic Kingdom theme park and resort, which would have taken up only a fraction of Walt's Florida property. This wasn't Disney's first attempt to bring sports and entertainment to the masses. In the early 1960s, Walt was working with the St. Louis Cardinals, among others, on an indoor recreation and amusement facility on the Mississippi River, which would have been linked with their brand new stadium. The New Jersey Meadowlands was also considered, then rejected, as a possibility for Disney's first East Coast indoor sports facility and theme park. In California, Walt was building a Disney ski resort in the Sierras called Mineral Springs. That project was abandoned after his death. As Jeff Barnes notes, America's national pastime was a big favorite of Walt's, and he definitely had an influence on it. Mr. Disney enjoyed spending time often alone at baseball games in Los Angeles, mostly minor league games, as the Dodgers did not arrive until 1958. Eventually, Los Angeles would have ended up with a second major league team. There's no way, however, that this team calls Anaheim home without Disneyland. When Walt's Park opened there in 1955, Anaheim was home to 14,000 residents. The population expanded rapidly. The Angels were born in 1962 and Anaheim immediately became a major league city, thanks to Disney. Without the development of Walt Disney World, one wonders if Florida's population ever grows large enough to support one, let alone two, current Major League Baseball franchises. Though Walt's 1960s plans of a major league team playing regular season games in Epcot never came to fruition, Disney did build the Wide World of Sports complex on their property in 1997, which became the spring training home of the Atlanta Braves. A lot has changed, both in baseball and in that Central Florida swamp, since 1966. It will continue to change, hopefully for the better. Fans of both will also, hopefully, continue to follow these changes and embrace them.